Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ned Bellavance, Ned1313 on Twitter, and welcome to the Daily Check-In. It's August 25th, 2020, and it is also Terraform Tuesday. I know it's your absolute favorite day of the week. It is mine too. It's not Taco Tuesday, unfortunately. No tacos. We bought some avocados. They're not quite ready yet, so we gotta hold off on the tacos for a couple days to let those avocados get just ripe enough, and then we can have our delicious tacos. But it is still Terraform Tuesday, and that's what we're going to talk about today, specifically how to use GitHub Actions with Terraform. Ooh, I'm skipping frames. What's going on here? Ooh, that's not good. All right, let's see if we can shut some stuff down. We'll shut all that down. My apologies. And we'll shut that down. And hopefully that gets us where we need to be. All right, looks like we're good. Okay. Anyway, so how's everybody doing out there? Like I said, it's Terraform Tuesday. The topic of today is going to be all about using GitHub Actions to work with Terraform and have that validate and sort of manage your code a little bit when you're doing a deployment. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Before I get to that, I do have a few housekeeping things that I wanted to bring up real quick. Number one of those is the Terraform certification guide for the Terraform Associate Cert has been updated for version 13. So 0.13 came out a little bit ago, and I'll throw a card up here for my video on what's new in 0.13. A lot of cool stuff that came out in that release, and it did have an impact on the guide. So I updated the guide for all the cool new features in 13. So if you already bought the guide, guess what? You get that update for free. You get updates for free forever, because that's just how LeanPub works. If you haven't bought the guide, now would be a good time because I just updated it, and I even fixed a couple sections that weren't quite right. So that's all done. The next thing is that I will be presenting at the .NET Liverpool meetup on this Thursday. So I think it's like 2 o'clock my time, East Coast, 7 p.m. their time. I'll put a link in the description in case you wanted to jump in and attend, and it's actually going to be an expanded version of what I'm going to be demonstrating today. And the third thing is, happy episode 100. This is the 100th episode of the Daily Check-In. Can you believe it? 100 episodes. I thought about skipping Terraform Tuesday and just talking about the ride so far, but I'm going to save that for a future episode because I know Terraform Tuesday is kind of like a highlight for some people. I've gotten a lot of good feedback on that. Oh, good Lord. So let's start by checking in because that's what we do around here. How are you? How are things going? Are you having a good Tuesday so far? Will you be having tacos? Let me know down in the comments. Now, this is going to be a slightly longer demonstration, so I don't want to clog things up with me doing the check-in. Instead, I would rather just jump straight into, oh, thank you, John. Happy 100th. Yay. I just want to jump straight into what I wanted to talk about today, which is specifically around Terraform. And it looks like I'm still getting a couple skipped frames. So let me just open up my task manager and see what's taken up all this CPU. And of course, it's Firefox, because why wouldn't it be Firefox? So let me just close. Well, I'm going to need to leave Firefox open actually to get to GitHub. So we're just going to have to deal with it. Okay. Anyhow, so all right, let's just jump straight into the Visual Studio Code demo. Go ahead and share out my screen. Okay, so we've got Visual Studio Code, and if you've never used Terraform Actions before, I just want to preface that a little bit. So Terraform Actions are basically automated jobs that you can run when something happens with your repository up in GitHub. So when you push new code, when you create a pull request, when you merge that pull request, when those different actions happen, you can have GitHub run these actions. And basically it spins up a little container, a container of your choice, and runs a series of jobs on that container. And those jobs are broken up into steps. So you have at the top level, you have a workflow, and that workflow is composed of jobs. The jobs run in parallel, and then those jobs have steps in them. So that's kind of the boop, boop, boop. That's the breakdown right there of what's going on inside a Terraform, inside of a GitHub action. Now, how does that apply to Terraform? All right, so in the world of Terraform, There are some things you might want to do when someone pushes code. Wow, I'm still skipping frames. I don't know what is going on here. My apologies. I'm gonna kill Firefox. Just close it all down. There we go. Okay. We'll reopen it as needed. Anyway. So how does this apply to Terraform? Well, when you push code up to GitHub that you've written for Terraform, you might want to validate that code and make sure that it's good code. And so there is a command called Terraform validate. That's something you could run. You might also want to generate a plan if someone puts in a pull request to merge their branch into the main branch to make sure that, well, or at least see what's going to happen when that merge when the updated code is applied to your environment. So that plan, you could review the output before you approve a pull request. So that's another instance where it might be useful. And then lastly, you can actually have it automatically apply that new configuration once the pull request is accepted. So those are some different ways in which you could use actions within GitHub to automate your Terraform workflow, as it were. So what I've got on the screen here is I have a configuration that I am, updating. And right now, the branch that I'm on, I was updating things for creating a stateful backend for the state for Terraform. And so that's defined in this backend.tf file. It's simply using Azure RM because Azure RM is what I'm using. But in the main.tf section of things, all I'm really doing is identifying that I want to use the Azure RM provider. And if we scroll down, I am creating a single resource, which is simply an Azure RM resource group. So that's what's going on inside my configuration. Now, if we go over to this folder here, .github/workflows, and take a look in the main.yaml, here is where it's telling GitHub what to do with actions. So basically, GitHub looks for this special file, the main.yaml, inside this folder path. And if it sees it, it will process it as a GitHub action. Now, what's in here? What's going on? What we're basically doing is at the top, we're starting our workflow and we're giving it a name. So the name of this workflow is validate code. And then when do you want this workflow to run? What are the triggers that would make this run? And I have two triggers, on push and on a pull request. So anytime there's a push to any branch or a pull request against any branch, I want this action to run. And within it, I have a job defined. I only have one job defined. And within jobs, the first thing, the job is called validate. And I've set some defaults in here. I've set the working directory. So that basically tells it, where are you going to be? What's the context where you're going to be running these commands? And I want it to be in the context of this GitHub Actions configuration. So I'm telling it, working directory for all the commands that happen after this is going to be inside that directory. And it's relative to the repository. And then the type of runner is what container image should it spin up for this stuff. I want it to use the latest Ubuntu, so it's going to use that. And then I have steps. This is what's actually going to happen. And the first thing I'm going into is uses. So uses basically loads some additional software into your container. The first one is the ability to check out. It's basically loading Git, so it can check out your repository and load it into this container. The second one is this HashiCorp setup Terraform, and this installs Terraform on the container. And you can control what version of Terraform using this with command, with setting, and set the Terraform version, and I'm setting it to 0.13. Now, if you don't set it, it just uses the latest version of Terraform, whatever that might be. Then we have a series of steps in here, and these are commands. So the first thing I do is properly format the configuration. And it will run into an error if it's not already properly formatted, but we're going to continue on that because I don't want it to fail. I can note that in the logs that, hey, you should be formatting your code. Then we have to initialize our code. And the reason we have to initialize our configuration is we can't validate it until we've initialized it. And I am using a remote backend here, so I have to initialize it with that remote backend. So the first thing I'm running is, so the name is just the name of the step. The ID is the ID that you can refer to within this entire job. And then I'm setting some environment variables so we can use those, and it's pulling those out of my GitHub secrets that are associated with this repository. So if you go into the settings for a repository, you can add secrets to that repository, and then those secrets will be available to GitHub Actions. So that way you don't have to hard code things like the SAS token or the name of the storage account. So I'm setting those as environment variables. And once I've set those as environment variables, I'm running a command. And those environment variables are only set for the context of this single process. They'll be cleared after the process is done. And I'm running Terraform init, and I'm setting backend config. And the only thing I need to pass it is the SAS token, and it does that through the environment variable. So it looks for ARM SAS token. And then I'm also setting the storage account name, and that I have to do using the backend config equals, and then this one configuration key value pair, storage account name equals whatever my storage account is. Once I've initialized my Terraform configuration, I'm going to validate it. So I'm going to run this command, Terraform validate, in this step, and it will output whatever the validation is, whether it's a valid or invalid. Then we get into Terraform plan. Now, I don't always want to run Terraform plan. Maybe I just want to validate when my code is good and stop there. Or sometimes I might want to run Terraform plan. So skipping a few lines down, there's this if statement. So each step in your job, you can add an if statement that makes it conditional whether or not this portion, this step will run. In this case, if the event type is pull request, thumbs up, go ahead and run Terraform plan. If it's not a pull request, don't run Terraform plan because I don't care. And what we're doing here is we're setting the environment variables so I can authenticate to Azure. So I'm setting the client ID, client secret, and tenant ID. Those are all stored in my secrets. And then under event name, I'm looking to make sure it's a pull request. And then I'm running Terraform plan and capturing that output. So the next thing, when you create a pull request, it creates an issue that you can leave comments under. And so what I want to do is when someone creates a pull request, I want this to automatically run. And then I want the plan output to end up in as a comment in my in the pull request, so I can see what's actually going to happen if this was run in production. So I'm getting that plan output. So this whole thing, and I didn't write this, this is copied pretty much verbatim, just basically captures the output from my plan, actually captures the output from my format, from my initialization, from my output, from my validate, and then also from my plan, and puts that all into a comment within that pull request. So I can see all of that when the pull request comes in. And just like before, I'm looking to make sure this is in fact a pull request event, or otherwise this step won't fire. If we scroll past all of that, the last step is Terraform apply. And so what this looks for is if the event is a push type and the push is to main, that's my main branch, then that means that I've accepted the pull request into main, because I would never commit directly to main. Or I would never push directly to main. So assuming that I'm merging a pull request, this is what it would look like. So now I want to apply. And just like plan, I'll load up my environment variables to authenticate to Azure. And finally, I will apply this with the auto approve. So it's already gone through the plan. I've approved the plan through the merge request. Now I can just apply it. So those are all of the steps. To just kind of give you a brief demonstration, let's go ahead and make a change in the main config. We'll change the environment name to TF Tuesday and save it. And then we'll go into here and we'll go ahead and commit the change, TF Tues. And once we've committed our change, we can go ahead and push this up to the GitHub repository. And once I do that, let me go ahead and load up Firefox and go to GitHub, Ned1313. And this is actually going to be in a slightly different repository than the other Terraform Tuesday stuff because it's very specific to this. So this is the GitHub Actions, and you can see it's now running the TF Tuesday action of validate code. If we can go ahead and click on that, and it'll show where it is in the process. So these are all the steps it's taken, and you can see it just finished. So it set up the job, it did the checkout, the HashiCorp setup, ran through the format command, ran through the initialization, did the validation of the code, did some post, and then completed the job. Because this wasn't a pull request, it didn't go through the pull request process. So if I expand out Terraform validate, the one thing we can see in here is success configuration is valid. So I check something in and we're good to go. It actually was successful in its configuration. Okay, so that's a lot. And I didn't cover everything because we're already at like 16 minutes and well over my normal amount of time. And still having skip frame problems, which I'm not happy about. And I'm gonna have to figure out what's going on with that. But hopefully that was helpful. If you want to get a more expanded version of this, like I said in the opening, I am going to be presenting at the .NET Liverpool meetup on Thursday. I'll include the link in the description so you can kind of see this whole process run through from soup to nuts, how it works, including the pull request and the merge to actually get this to apply to an existing environment. So that's everything I have for today. I know it's a little longer than normal, but I was kind of excited that I got this all to work yesterday. I just wanted to show somebody. That's all I have for today. Tomorrow is tech analysis, and I'll get this frame rate issue fixed before then. So